Welcome to the Life's a Bit podcast. I'm your host, Larry Mullins, and today's guest has appeared on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert and opened for the likes of Colin Quinn, Gary Goldman, and Gilbert Gottfried, to name a few. She has her own podcast called Good Time Gal. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Caitlin Peluffo.
Next on my list is getting like an official microphone.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't like spending money, and when I bought this laptop, I was like, oh, God. Like, I felt like I was going to throw up when I spent that amount of money. I was like, oh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. It's like anytime you drop a large amount of money at one time, you're like, what am I? I've made a huge mistake. This is what am I even going to use a laptop? And then you're like, yes, I'm going to use a laptop a lot.
Yeah. So I was watching, like, well, Colbert's like one of my favorite late night guys.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I was watching when you did that, and the whole softball skinny thing, I was crying.
Oh, thanks.
Because like I went to high school with several girls like that, and I guess you would say like softball skinny is like actually my type.
Mm-hmm.
Because like when you described that, it totally made sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
And like, how exactly now, is that like how you actually referred to yourself, or how did you come up with that? I'm just wondering, like, the thought process behind stuff like that just always baffles me, and I'm always curious about that.
Yeah. Well, I've always played sports since I was 5. I've been playing pretty much every sport. I was pretty athletic, and my parents were like so afraid that I would get fat that they just, because I was an eater too. I loved eating. So they just shoved me in all the sports, and I was huge. I was this big kid. And so I was known as like this jock. And it was weird. I remember having this one instance where I was at summer camp, and I was wearing my clothes. I never thought I was a big girl. I never thought I was fat. I liked my body.
Yeah.
And then this one girl who was this tiny little size 2 itsy bitsy thing, we were doing like a clothing swap, and she tried on my pants, and they were huge on her. And she was like, oh my God, look, these pants are so big. And I wanted to murder her. I mean, her name is Ellen. I'll never forget her. We weren't even friends, and I'll kill her if I ever see her again. But yeah. And I remember it was like, am I big? I didn't even think I was big. But it was more, I've never been fat. I've always just been muscular, and it's always made me a size 8 to 10. Just because I have this build. And I was trying to think of like something silly, because I played soccer. Soccer skinny doesn't sound the same, you know? So it was just like trying to find the right sport where it kind of was like, it made that, it had a good visual imagery. So softball skinny is kind of like, just like, I used to call it an in-betweener body. I'm not fat. I'm not thin. I'm just very muscular.
Yeah.
And so a very succinct way to say that is softball skinny.
The thing is, when you said that, like, I knew exactly what you were talking about, because every girl that played softball in my high school pretty much had the same build. Mm-hmm. Like, they weren't big, but they weren't small. Mm-hmm. And like, it just baffles me, like, how comedians come up with certain things. I'm like, is it something that actually happened in their life and they just kind of added some stuff to it? And like, I've always been into like watching and listening to stand-up comedy, but especially with this whole, pandemic going on, like, that's like all I've been watching. Like that's all I've been watching, because I'll get into a mood where I'm just like, oh my God, like I don't have depression, but like I'll just get in like a real bummer mood, and I'm like, man, I like to laugh and smile. I like to find like the humor and like the really messed up stuff, because like you have to. And the other thing you talked about on the Colbert thing, which made me laugh, and my friends and I talk about a lot, is the whole thigh gap thing, which I actually don't like.
Yeah, it seems unnatural.
It's because I look at these really skinny chicks, and I'm like, that just looks unhealthy. Like, you look like you're on something. And like, so many people like think like, oh, that looks so good, but I'm not one of those guys.
Well, that's what it was in like all the like 80s and 90s. Like, growing up, it was like heroin chic. I was born in
I've used
late
that term
80s.
before. Yeah.
And it's just it's like, that's not good. And so a thigh gap was something I didn't even realize was a thing until I moved to New York. And actually a gay man was telling me about how he was trying to get a thigh gap. And I was like, what is that? I've never had it. I've always had like horrible chafing thighs. And it's just, it's baffling to me that people, like, that's a desire. And now I see it on women and I'm like, are you okay? Is everything all right? Like, what happened? But yeah, that's one of those things. Like, I'll never have a thigh gap. I don't have the body for it. And I've never been more thrilled.
I'm surprised. You said a gay man was telling you he was trying to get a thigh gap. That's crazy. I've never heard of a guy talking about it like that.
Yeah, he was a very he was a feminine fellow. But yeah, I forget what we were talking about. He was like, I'm trying to get that thigh gap. And I was like, what? So
that's so funny. Yeah, I don't know. Like I had a probably like one good like gay friend in high school, and he was one of the the flamboyant gay guys. There's some gay guys that are just kind of like low key about it. They're not like really, and there's some that are just like, oh, they're super flamboyant. And that's the kind of friend I had in high school. And I remember I'm like the type of guy, like I'd get like a crush on a girl and be like, oh, you're like my brother, or you're like my friend, and I get like friend zone all the time. And I remember telling him, I was like, hey man, should I like try going gay? Should I? And he'd be like, no, you're straight. Don't do that. But
yeah.
but yeah. It was just funny though. I mean, I just never heard of a guy wanting a thigh gap. That just sounds crazy.
Yeah. I remember in high school, I grew up in San Francisco. And so being gay was always, gay people were always around and we knew about them, and it was never, no one made fun of anybody. Yeah. And but it still doesn't occur to you when you're a kid, when you're like, I would think I was around 15. I was taking driver's ed, and the guy sitting next to me, we became friends immediately. And he was now I realize it's very flamboyant, but I was like, man, we're into all of the same things. He's so talkative and funny and kind, and he is and was all of those things, but he also loved Hello Kitty and things like that, But I didn't put it together, and I was like, oh man, I think we're just friends, but if he wanted to do more, I would do it. And then he was like, girl, I'm gay. And I was like, okay, yeah. All right, that all
makes sense now. Yeah.
Yes, but it's funny, you connect the dots, and you're just like, this person is wonderful. I feel so close to, like, it was a very big realization for me that people could be gay, and I was like, this is good for you.
I grew up like in a very like, I guess you could say, sheltered, very strict household, but my parents got divorced when I was 9, and like I was kind of they wouldn't tell me like, don't grow up and be like this. So that was just kind of shielded from me. And when I discovered that, I was like, oh, okay, and my whole, if you're happy, you're happy. That's the way I look at it. I don't, whatever.
Yeah.
And but I've learned, like growing up in a strict household like sucked, because like you have to act this way, you have to and then I discovered all these great movies, all these great R-rated movies that are just great, and I like being able to form my own opinion is amazing. I don't like talking politics with anybody. I have what I think, and that's it. I'm just, because with the state of the world and all this crap going on, I'm like, you never know, you could say one wrong thing and it could like set somebody off.
Yeah. It's a sensitive time.
I always like, I know how do I word this? Like, I should have typed this out. Sorry.
That's okay.
Now, obviously, I imagine getting on there with Colbert was like huge for you. I was wondering how exactly does that process work? Like, do you have to like make some kind of tape and send it in, or I'm just like, cause I'm literally fascinated by stuff like that. Like, how does that actually happen?
Yeah, it's actually a huge, long, like months, sometimes years, long process to get it done. I was very lucky. I had a very unique well, maybe not unique, but a very fast experience with it. The booker, Jessica Pilot, she's extremely nice, lovely, comedy nerd. And she was at a comedy festival I was at. I saw her in the audience, and so I was like, I'm going to do all my clean material, which was about, I think I had like 8 minutes that were good enough. And so I ran my set. She didn't say anything, and I was like, that's okay. I'll send her a tape later on when it's, I have a good tape.
Yeah.
And then I think like 2 weeks later, she was helping other people run their Colbert sets at a club, and I was doing a guest spot, and I went up and I did the dirtiest set I'd ever done in my life. I mean, it was filthy. And I knew she was there, and I was like, well, she already saw my clean stuff and she didn't like it. So I'm not even going to think about it. I'm going to do whatever I want. And I had a really good set, and she came up to me afterwards and was like, I would love to work with you. And so that's the first part, is just being seen by her.
Yeah.
That takes a lot. Sometimes people go to festivals to get seen, and sometimes they just get lucky, or they have their manager call and set up they send in a tape. Because after that, I had to get a tape of the material I wanted to do, and then they had to narrow down the jokes that they wanted. And then I had to make another tape with all those jokes, and then I would have to make another tape if they wanted a different order. It was constantly changing.
Like a different order of what the jokes were in? Really? It was that technical?
Yeah, and I had to send in a transcript with every single word that I would say, and then they would have to send it to legal to make sure that I could say those things.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it was basically, they were worried about getting sued. Is what they don't want the comedians to do, is to get them sued. And so I was very lucky that I didn't have a lot of changes. I had, I remember I tried to get one joke on where I said Dick Slayer, and they were like, you can't say Dick Slayer. And I was like, well, all right, that's fair. But like, I didn't really have to fight for anything. It was pretty much the set I wanted to do. I got really lucky, but it took, between when she saw me and when I was on TV, it took about 2.5 to 3 months. And usually that process, my boyfriend, who you saw his butt behind me, his process took 6 to 8 months.
Jeez.
Somewhere around there. And then my other friend, it took her a full year. So it's I got really lucky that mine was so fast. And what they do is they pre-tape all the comedians. So I never met Colbert.
Oh, that sucks.
I know. I was like, they told me how it was happening, and I was like, oh, that's a bummer. But then it was also like, oh, that's kind of nice. The pressure's off a little bit,
He's not sitting there watching.
No.
While it's being taped.
What they do is they take 5 comedians that they know they're going to air, and they fill up the audience with, anybody who wants free tickets to a future show, your friends, your family. Like, we each get like 20 tickets or something like that. And so everybody comes. It's like an hour-long show. We each perform our sets. They tape it, and then throughout the time, like the duration of the next like 2 months, they'll air a segment with the comedian.
Yeah.
And so I was supposed to initially be aired with Lady Gaga. And then I found out like maybe an hour before, maybe 10 minutes after I said, hey, I'm going to be on Colbert tonight. They bumped me.
Oh, man.
But then I got to air with Hillary Clinton, and that's okay.
That's cool.
I'm fine with that. Yeah. It was like an all women's lineup on Colbert, and so it was very fun. And Melissa McCarthy, so that was very cool.
It's weird. Like, I would have never guessed it was pre-taped, because like the transition was like so seamless, because like he introduced you and then you came out and then it went right. I couldn't have told. That's why I was like, when you told me that.
Yeah, it's very weird. I don't think any other show does that. Maybe Kimmel. I think Kimmel also does that, but Colbert does that. And it's nice if it's your first time, because it's like a late night on, training wheels. You get to ease into it. You're like, oh, I'm just doing a show in a very famous theater, Yeah. But now you want now I look back and I'm like, I wish I could have shook his hand or something, But what are you going to do? I'm still very grateful, obviously. I would still take it.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, it's always it's funny too when I discover people that they're a lot of their comedies like kind of, you know, R-rated, X-rated, and then like, oh, they have some late night appearances, and I watch like clean stuff. I'm like, this is just so mind blowing, you know, because like I said, I tend to lean towards the dirtier, darker stuff. But I mean, if I hear that same person do, if something super clean can make me bust out laughing, then I know it's good.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, I tend to be pretty dirty, but in order to get work, I find you have to have at least like 20 minutes PG to PG-13 in order to work. And so I have that. And it's I whip that out when I need to. Like in a couple weeks I'm going to be hosting for Brian Regan, who is a very clean, obviously clean comic. And all of his people who opens for him have to be clean. And so it's like, okay, I need 12 minutes clean for that. So I have to go through and make sure. But his clean is different. It's like no sex, no religion, and no politics. And so that gets rid of some other jokes that I have that are technically clean. So it's, you know, it's important as a comic to have a clean set. Otherwise, you're not going to work very much.
So yeah, it makes you more like, you got to be more adaptable, I imagine. Like, I imagine you say getting work. I mean, I heard someone say that it's a lot more difficult to come up with clean stuff than it is like, I can't even imagine. I've always wondered like how the brain works, like whether you draw from like stuff from childhood or, you know, because I know when I'm out and about, like funny crazy shit happens to me all the time. And I was like, whoa, what was that? You know, but I don't know if that's how it happens, or
you mean like coming up with material, how that?
Yeah, like I don't know if that sounds like a stupid question, but like
no.
Wondered.
It's honestly the golden question, because it's coming up with material is so different to each comedian. I know for me, and it usually has to do with personal experience, and then I usually start backwards, and I think of a funny line, like, oh, that would be funny, I can't think of one right off the top of my head. I just woke up, in all honesty.
It's okay.
I'm a sleeper. I go to bed at 2 and then I wake up at noon. But like I think of a line and then I'll try and work, oh, how can I turn that into a joke? That's a funny thing, or I like the way that sounds. And then I'll move backwards. Or I will try and tell an experience I had in a funny way. Like honestly, us just talking, that Ellen story of her with the pants, I'm like, oh, I forgot about that. Maybe I'll turn that into a joke.
I thought just you telling the story was funny. I mean,
yeah. Oh, well, thank you. I'll write it down.
You know, so I guess in some cases it could be fairly simple to do it, but other times it could be difficult.
Yeah.
I don't need to like reveal your secret, but I mean, I was kind of wondering how the thought process works. That just always like fascinated me.
Like my boyfriend, he does it differently. He's also, I think I mentioned he's also a comic. Oh boy, coffee kick in. He'll think of a topic that he likes, you know, like calendars or something like that, and then he'll write just train of thought, write down for like 3 pages everything he can about calendars, and then see if anything in there is funny or if he could turn it into a joke, and then he'll tweet it. And then depending on how that tweet does, then he'll try and make it work. And sometimes he doesn't do the tweet, but you know, it's just, he does like a train of thought. And I'm like, I like this topic. I'm going to figure out a way to make it funny and then go from there. And
it could sometimes be really quick, and it could sometimes take hours.
Oh, I've been working on jokes for years. I have like 2 jokes that I can't find an ending to. One I just found an ending to, thank God, but it's like really, really dirty, so I can't say very much, but it's still fun, but it takes so long.
I wanted to ask, and another thing too is I was trying to like, you know, some of these people probably get asked a lot of the same stuff, same things all the time, and I wanted to like not go down that road because I don't want to be that guy. But I was curious, like what age were you like when you decided, all right, this is what I want to do? Like 100%, like
100, probably 27. never thought that I could do that when I was younger, even though I look back at all of my actions and everything I was into, and it was like, girl, duh, you were going to be in entertainment, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But it took, I went into art. I always thought you had, this is going to sound so self-deprecating, but I always thought you had to be really, really pretty and really, really skinny in order to be in entertainment. And I have a mole on my leg, and it's not anything horrible, but I always thought, well, I can't, you know, I see these women wearing small dresses. I would always have to hide it, and that's
Yeah.
just too much and too much rejection. I can't. And then and so I went the sports route,
Mm-hmm.
and I went because you didn't really see strong women, you know, my type of woman on screen. You know,
Yeah.
you saw the very tiny Ally McBeals, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know why I picked her. Good for her.
She's super
She's
small.
super small. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And Clarissa Flockhart, I think, is that her name?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. It's like I can't even. I'm probably aging myself right now. But for some reason, that's what I thought. And then I got into art and photography. But I've always loved stand up. I've always loved comedies. And then I just had like a dream one day, and I was like, I could do that. I think I could do that because I've always been funny and the class clown and making people laugh and wild, crazy. And then I tried my first open mic, and it was like a month into it. After I finally starting to get the hang of it and started getting laughs, I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna do this until I'm dead." Okay, I see it now.
That's a really cool story. Like I don't know. Like I never did sports or anything. Like I remember first day of my senior year, I had like I don't know, I live in Virginia, and I don't know if they call them that in New York, but they had these classes called electives where like where you just get to like fulfill the credits. And it was some computer class, and the teacher was also the track and field coach. And he's like, you're trying out after school. I was like, no, I'm not. Cause like I'm tall and lanky. And he's like, you've got the runners. I'm like, no, I was, you know, at that during that time, I was, you know, pretty much, you know, driving to school, smoking weed on the way to school, you know, and just hanging out with that. Not like at a small group of friends, but you know, that was when I started that. And I'm like, no, I could run. I didn't really want to obligate myself, I guess, to like a team or something. And I had never done that. And I was scared. Like I probably could have done it, but I was just scared to do it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's intimidating to try something you've never even done before. Like that's what kept me from starting comedy for so long. I wanted to do it for years, but I thought that I had it in my brain that people who did comedy were either went to school for writing or performance or were actors or something, and I didn't have that training. And I was like, who do I think I am that I think I can just go on stage and make people laugh? And turns out that's everybody. Nobody is trained in anything. Every once in a while you get someone who is, and it's literally just having the guts to try it is what separates a comedian from a regular person.
Yeah, what I couldn't get over is like I have like incredible stage fright. Cause like I was in bands in high school, and even doing that, like playing it for like that was like, it scared the crap out of me. And like, I know like once you like start, it's fine. But it's just initially starting. And I kind of wondered, like, is that kind of like the same thing? Like you're like, oh crap, this is about to happen. And then you get up there, and then once you start, you're like, okay. And you hear a few laughs, and you're like, all right, cool, I can do this.
It's funny because when I first started, I never really had stage fright. It wasn't going in front of people that intimidated me. I was like, oh, that's easy. I can be in front of people. It was the finding the jokes, you know, saying a funny joke in front of people. Because when nothing is worse than when a joke doesn't work and you just want to crumple up and die.
Or you say something and you don't get a laugh at all, and you're just like, oh.
And you're just staring out, and you're like, oh, and you think, oh God, the worst is saying something that's borderline, you know, like when I was starting out, I would try, you know, edgy jokes. Yeah. And when you're not getting laughs and you don't know what you're doing, edgy jokes just sound offensive. And so I was like, oh no, do people think I'm a horrible person now? You know, it's like, well, learn how to write a joke first and then try and be edgy. And so I stay away from that still. I'm not trying to be too edgy. It doesn't matter. That's a side note. Anyway, but that one,
that's funny.
That one will hurt your at your core, because then you just question whether or not you're a good person. But yeah, and then but I would about like 3 years in, I started getting these panic attacks before I went on stage. And they were minor panic attacks. My heart would race. I would start sweating. I would get really talkative. I would have to move around a lot. It was like frantic, getting very frantic. And I talked to a therapist about it, and she told me it was a minor panic attack that I was having every time I went on stage. And at that point, I was getting on stage, I think, like 4 to 5 times a night. And so it was like,
wow.
Yeah. And it happened every time. And it was like, and so I just had to learn. And that's why I didn't have an opener for a long time. I'd go on stage and I would just talk to the audience rapid fire. And then I would go into my first joke. And it was just because I was getting rid of that energy. But as soon as the first joke lands, it's fine. I could care less.
The whole like rapid fire thing and talk, like I don't I don't see how, like, that just seems so difficult. Like, cause you got to be like super quick to do something like that, I imagine.
Well, yeah, in a way that helped a lot, especially because I host. It helps. Just like I would just say the first thing I saw, and rule of threes. The last thing I would say would usually get a laugh, because it would always be like the most off the cuff. And so I would just do that. And so it just makes you think quick and then trust your initial thought and realize that you're not going to say something mean. It's, I don't know. It's tricky. It's the rapid fire thing. It's just not having a filter.
Yeah, imagine that situation. A lot of stuff just comes out. You're like, I hope, like you said, the offending someone, like I hope something just doesn't slip out. That's like,
yeah,
I'd be scared that I'd like say something that would just totally piss somebody off. Like, but I'm sure that just happens in general.
Yeah, if those people are going to get pissed off by something you say, then they're going to get pissed off no matter what. I don't think I've ever offended someone to the point. I remember I teased a girl about being skinny, and she got upset, and they were all compliments. And so her friends were like, "What's wrong with you?" And she was like, and she just was like, "I just didn't want to be pointed out at all. I didn't want anyone to see me or talk to me, anything." And then I was like, "But you were sitting in the front row." That's like,
it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Exactly. So it's like, sometimes people don't realize when they come to a comedy show that that's an option. They think that it's just going to be like Netflix, where, they can't be seen, but
yeah, it's like, I like to think all bets are off.
Yeah. It's the beauty of live stand-up. It's like, anything can happen.
I've only, and it's crazy. Like I've only actually been to one stand-up show live. I'm going to one at the end of this month in Arlington. And,
great.
It was for my birthday years ago. It was at the Funny Bone in Richmond.
Yeah.
I don't even know. Is that still open?
I think if they're not opening up soon, they will, but it was like a year ago. It was open. I almost worked it.
This was like probably, I don't know, maybe 12 years ago or something. And it was for my birthday. And I remember just being really drunk. And I remember it was sat at the table, like right in the front. And I was like, I don't even remember who I saw. It wasn't anybody big, but they were jabs at me, and I was just laughing, having a good time. I'm like, you have to know that you're going to see this. Some stuff might happen. If you get easily offended, you came to the wrong place. Like,
exactly. Yeah. And it's and I always find it interesting that people will go to a show who do get easily offended. If you're a person who doesn't get easily offended, go to any show. But if you're a person who likes a particular kind of comedy, you should definitely research who you're about to see. It's like going to see a movie and knowing nothing about it. It's like, I hate superhero movies. I'm going to go see, what's this, Captain America? That doesn't make any sense. So it's like, if you're a person who hates like dirty comedy, then you should definitely research, because every comic has a bio and it says, "I am filthy," like like it'll say, "I am you can get a sense of their tone when they, and so so you can do the research and you can see if you are even going to enjoy this.
And like their style and everything.
Yeah, because there are clips online, and so you can literally see, like even my cleanest clip, which is Colbert, I still mention porn. So it's like, if you're gonna get offended at that, then you should not come and see me.
Yeah, that's what I'd like. That's what I'll do. Like I'll watch like just basically living on YouTube, watching all kinds of clips of everyone, and I tend to. I don't know. Well, so far, everybody that's my favorite, my personal favorite, all I believe lives in New York. All of my favorites pretty much live in New York, or at least the East Coast. And I don't know, maybe that's a sign, but like I've noticed all of like, oh, they're my favorite. Like I'm like, oh damn, they all live in New York. Like I've been to New York once my entire life. Like my cousin and I rode one of those mega buses.
Yeah.
Up to New York, and we didn't plan well at all. And the weather ended up being crappy. It was raining. Didn't have an umbrella. Had to go buy an umbrella. It broke. So we went to this, I don't remember exactly where it was. We went to this gigantic Apple store. I think it was near Times Square. I guess I don't remember the exact street it was on, but we had to hang out in there for like 2 hours just looking at random stuff. And we ended up going back early. We tried as much of the pizza as we could. I'm like, man, this sucks. You got to go back when it's like nicer weather. Like that's the only time I've been to New York. It's the only time.
Oh yeah. You got to come back when things open back up. It's, my favorite place in the world. I was a West Coast girl, and then I moved here, and I immediately felt at home. Like I was like, oh, this is what was missing. I was on the wrong coast.
Yeah, I wanted like what is it like in New York with everything going on? Is it starting to a lot more starting to reopen, like with the pandemic and everything? And
well, not really. Like
streets a lot less busy and all that stuff. And
actually, during the height of the pandemic, the streets were empty, and I have a car, so we were just going wherever we needed to go. There was no traffic. But now people don't want to take the subway, and so people are driving more, so there's a bit more traffic. But I think it'll even out. The subway, whenever I go on it, everybody's wearing a mask and is very respectful and keeping distance. So that's good. But right now, like the restaurants are open, but everything's for outdoor seating. Same with comedy. And so comedy is back in a way. Where I am very lucky that I get to do a bunch of sets, but it's like everything's socially distanced, everything's outside. So if it rains, we're screwed.
Yeah.
And like tonight I have 3 shows, and there's a chance that all of them could be canceled because of the rain, which is money. Like I was getting paid for at least 2 of them. And so it was like, things are open, but it's not what it was, obviously.
The whole outside thing, it just looks really fun to me. Like I love when people like post videos like, oh, like that just looks so cool. Like I love the just, it looks kind of awkward, especially like in the park.
Yeah.
That looks awkward. People just like sitting on the grass. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I could do that. But then like, it's just funny seeing that. It's like, that looks so cool.
Yeah, I did that. I did a park one yesterday, and it turned out to be really fun. It's very low stakes, so you can try a lot of new material. And the people are just sitting on blankets, and they're just like, we chose to be here, and do what you're going to do. And it was very fun. I enjoy them. Some people hate them, but it's also sometimes you don't get a microphone, so you're just shouting. Yeah. And that's never been a problem for me. So, yeah.
I imagine some people who aren't really allowed have a problem like projecting their voice. Like, I kind of need a microphone,
Yeah, no, I shout into the microphone. So
but it's like
half the time I don't need it.
With me, like living where I live, like the only place I ever really knew of was, or heard of at least around here, was the Funny Bone. Like I don't really know of much. Like I know in DC and this place I'm going at the end of the month is Arlington Draft House. It's like a theater that was like turned into
wonderful. That's a great place.
That's where I'm going at the end of the month, and I'm like, okay, cool. So I didn't know about that before. I don't know how long that's been a thing, but.
Yeah, I just had a couple of friends do it. Shane Torres did it, and Sarah Tolomash. They both did the Arlington Draft House, and they said it was a blast. and that it's a great crowds and they love comedy and it's really, really fun. Do you know who you're going to see?
I'm seeing Mark Normand.
Ah, Mark, that
Yeah.
little twerp. I
Yeah.
love him. Yeah, Mark's great. So you'll have a great time there. Yeah, Mark, he's funny. He's just rapid fire jokes.
I
So if you like jokes, you're gonna have a good time.
Yeah, no, like I tend to like more of the, like, some people, what I've noticed, some people are good with like telling stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I tend to lean more towards like this, I just like actual jokes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what I like. And I think you're like a good mix of both. It's like half and half kind of. It's not like some
Mm-hmm.
super long drawn out story. It's like kind of more like a scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Like a really quick, you know, because sometimes like I hear like a long story, I'm like, okay, where's this going? Where's this going? And I just literally just become addicted to like watching interviews. I'm like, hey, it's, you know, there could be worse addictions, you know, and like
Sure.
I love learning it, like, because I'm just like so into it now. I love learning about everybody. I love hearing stories, like them tell stories and how they work. It just fascinates me. I don't know.
Yeah. If you like jokes, I don't know. Someone who does the very good jokes and storytelling is Sean Patton. He has a great This Is Not Happening. I think it's called Cumin, Cumin, but he calls it Cumin. And it's one of the funniest stories I've ever. He's great. So he was also on one of my episodes of Good Time Gal, the first one actually. But it's that story is filled with jokes, and it's like a 15-minute story, but it's joke, and then the climax is great.
It's crazy.
Coming.
Like I don't want to get like talking about like, because this is about you, not other people, but like the people I gravitated towards, like you, Mark, Joe, Sam Morril, people like that.
Oh yeah.
Like those are like my level. I typically don't like people that are super huge.
Mm-hmm.
But like the more, I guess, mid-level, I guess you would say, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know, but like, and the funniest stuff I've seen I have found on YouTube, not on like Netflix
No.
and that's like the funniest stuff I found.
A lot of Netflix, they film in theaters, which is a completely different vibe. Whereas I'm assuming you saw all three of their specials on YouTube. Yeah. And those are all filmed in a club, and the laughs are fantastic. I loved all three of their specials, but Joe's I thought was one of the best comedy specials like in the past decade. It was just so tight and really funny, and the crowd was insane. So kudos to you, Joe.
I like that. I like that environment. Like just it seems much more intimate. It's more tight. It's like the actual space. It just seems more.
Yeah. I think
like
the big
that's the
difference
type of
is
place I want to go to and watch something like that.
Yeah, they produced their own special. And so they created it. So a comic created that, whereas Netflix, you get some random person who's like, let's do a big theater and make it all beautiful. And comics are like, we don't want that. We want a small, intimate space where people are sitting on top of each other laughing. And so that's why I think those three specials are so successful, because they were produced by comics.
Yeah, like kind of like a do-it-yourself type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like with this, you know, I it's funny. I brought this up to my cousin like 2 months ago. I said I kind of want to do this because he does like his own like weight loss one, fitness one, or whatever. And I was like, you know, I'm like, but I don't know. Like I'm probably gonna get a bunch of no's. Nobody's gonna say yes.
Mm-hmm.
And like I'll get like an idea and then I won't follow through with it. And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. If I keep getting no's, whatever, I'm not going to give up. And once I realized I could do the Zoom thing, I said, you know what? I started watching like all these podcasts. Like I'll listen to them when like I'm not around a TV. I'll listen to them on my phone with like the headphones in or something, but I like to actually watch them because I feel it's more personal. And I like seeing facial reactions. I'm weird like that. I guess I'm like a geek or whatever, but you know, when somebody says something funny, I like seeing the other person's facial reaction, you know? Because sometimes that doesn't translate on like audio, but that's, like I said, it's all I've been watching. And I was just like, you know what? I want to do that. Yeah, I'm not a comic, but I enjoy listening and watching that stuff. I'd like to just have chats, so I hope this has been pretty good so far. Like, I don't want to ask, like, so when did this, da, da, da. I don't want to ask. I don't want it to be like an official quote unquote interview per se.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
You're doing great.
I even had like notes typed down and everything that I'm kind of following. Not like I didn't type out actual questions, but one of the things I typed down is, like, my cousin and I actually it's funny, like, he's my best friend and he's my cousin, but like we're almost like a couple. Like, we talk every day when he's on his way home from work. We talk for like an hour and a half, and we just shoot the shit, just talk about random things. And we always like, okay, so this is where I kind of came up with this question. Like, what would you say would be the funniest or craziest thing that's happened to you this past week? Funniest, craziest, or weirdest thing. I mean,
okay. Well, I got tested for COVID after I was on the road with Brian Regan. We came back, we got tested, and the woman, she swabbed my nose, and it was great. And it's awful. It's an awful feeling. Have you been tested?
No, not not formally.
Oh my God. It goes so up. It's like touching your brain. And she's like, oh, da, 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 da. And then she puts it in, and then it falls out and hits the floor, and she has to do it again. And I was like,
because she dropped it.
Because she dropped it.
Oh, no.
And I was like, no. And so she had to do the other nostril, go up there. I'm like, no. That was something that was funny and awful.
I can imagine, like, because just you describing that, it makes me hurt. It makes me cringe, because like I hate getting like the strep test when they take that thing and stick it all the way back and it makes you gag. Like, I hate that. Like, I can't imagine. Oh.
Yeah, it was
like, I went recently to I think California is like the number one like hotspot, I think.
California
right
or Florida, one of the two.
Well,
yeah.
I went to Florida a few weeks ago.
Oh no.
to visit a friend, and and like I kept reading like notification on the phone every day, like, death toll, exceeds this in Florida. I was like, oh man. And like I wore my mask the whole time, and I came back. I was like, all right, well, I'll follow protocol. I'll stay inside for 14 days. And I took my own temperature every day, and I still feel fine. There was no change. And this is almost a month later. So I'm like, all right, I guess I'm cool.
Yeah.
No coughs, no. And I've watched videos of people getting the test. I'm like, oh no. Like,
yeah, it's extremely uncomfortable.
That would make me cry, like, because that's a sensitive area. Like,
it was close. She dropped it, and I was like, we can't just pick it up and put it back in. Oh, no.
Just blow it off. And
yeah, I was like, I don't care if it's a false negative. I can't do that again. But she was like, no, we got to do it again. I was like, God damn it. Yeah. And then my cat has been insane. We just got a cat. She's a sweet babe. She's hypoallergenic, so she looks a little weird. But she's my favorite thing on this planet. And she's been batshit crazy.
Now, hypoallergenic what exactly does that mean? Because I've heard that several times before. I just don't quite sure know what it means.
She's a Devon Rex. So she's very short hair. She doesn't create the dander that makes people allergic.
Okay.
And so that's why her hair is so short and almost on her belly, like she doesn't have any hair. So she looks like a little goblin. But she has been insane. Like, we took her to, we did road gigs. We took her with us. And so we put her in a backpack, and we walk around Bloomington, and she's like just scaring the shit out of people, just popping up out of the backpack, being like, hello. And they're like, there's a creature in this gym. Oh no. But yeah, she's right there, and she's sleeping. Otherwise I'd get her and be like, this is what she looks like. But I don't want to be an asshole. If someone woke me up to be like, I'm going to show how weird you look to everybody. I mean, I'm also personifying a cat.
I have a little white fur ball and Maltese, those little tiny dogs.
Yeah.
I inherited from from a failed marriage, and she's like, just take him. He follows you around everywhere. So,
Oh,
he like,
well, that's a sad and happy story at the same time.
Yeah, it's a very like bipolar type story. You know, like he'll like sit in the chair with me between my legs and just fall asleep.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but now this one I thought, I'm proud of this one because I'm like, you know, I got to come up with some really original sounding question, and forgive me if you've been asked this before, but hopefully you haven't. Okay, if your life now, okay, first off, my favorite sitcom of all time is Seinfeld.
Okay.
Like I don't know, like I generally tend to lean towards watching shows like that don't have a live audience behind them though. Like I love like comedies.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about, like the
stuff
like The Office or something like that, where there's no live audience behind it. But if your life was a sitcom, what would it be called, and what event from your life would be in the, say, pilot episode in order to convince networks to turn it into a show?
I don't what it's called. Maybe that'll come to me if I explain what it is. I would say the weirdest part of my life was when I was such a jock. I was such a jock in college because I played college soccer.
Yeah.
And then I went to art school, and just that switch over. I was such a jock amongst all these prissy bitches. And it was like I was such a fish out of water among all these very pretentious, highfalutin people. So I would say that might be that transition.
I would watch that. Good. That sounds funny though. I mean, because I can see it, you know, like a jock going to like some really like preppy, uppity, like.
Yeah, like some art. Like I went to Pratt, which is and I got my master's degree. So it's literally going to graduate school amongst people who have made art and being bullied their entire life, you know, like that's what their thing was. And then I was the bully, you know what I mean? Like I was the jock who was kind of a bitch and a drunk and rowdy, you know, but that's
kind of cool
secret passion for art. So and then I ended up getting into a very good art school. So it was a learning experience for all of us the first year. And then anyway, but so maybe that would be what would I call it? I have no idea. What would be a good name for that? Jock art?
That's actually what I was gonna say, surprisingly. And I'm like, no, that's really stupid. I'm like, oh, don't ask me. I'm not I just kind of like, you know, because I see some shows and I'm like, I wonder if this is based on anybody's life. And I'm like, I hear comedians tell stories on these things, and I was like, man, I would totally watch that if it were a show. Like I 100%, but like I don't know. I mean, I think you should start like a GoFundMe or something so you can put together your own special. I'm just saying, because I know that costs money. You know, I don't know a lot, but I know you got to, like, you know, I guess to like rent out the place and to get the crew and everything and all that. And
well, I was supposed to record a album the beginning of this year or the beginning of next year, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen just because of COVID. Because I don't want to do it outdoors. I want to, you know, I want it to be done right. And there's no rush, so I'll do it when things go back to normal, quote unquote. So. Yeah, we'll see. But one day it'll happen.
Okay. Yeah. Cause I you know, I hate to say this, but I'm like, the stuff that's on like the networks, at least, you know, Netflix and stuff, I'm not a super huge fan of. Like, I already told you what I thought about that. I'm just like, some of it's funny, but I'm just like, I don't know. It's, I guess I don't want to sound like a snob, you know, but I mean, I know who I like, and generally when the people I like mention someone, I end up liking them. And it's because they're kind of similar in ways, you know, and but that's about all I have.
Oh, great.
Oh, yeah. So
you did a wonderful job.
All right. Well, thank you so much for doing this. And
of course, thanks for asking me. I'm honored to be the first one.
Well, thank you. I feel special.
You are special.
But again, thank you Thank you. I used to have a shirt that says, "My mommy says I'm special."
Mm-hmm.
I'll walk into a door frame. My depth perception's a little off sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, I see.
That's years of abuse I did to myself, but I'm all right now though.
That's good. And you got a sweet dog. You're doing great.
Well, thanks again. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It was
You're
nice
welcome.
talking to you.
Nice talking to you too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so very much for checking out this episode of the Life's a Bit podcast. Please follow Caitlin on all social media at Caitlin Peluffo. Also, follow the podcast on all social media at Life's a Bit Pod. If you're watching on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're listening, please rate and write a review. I appreciate the support. New episodes every Friday, and we'll catch you on the next one.